Good morning, Eights. This is Mr.Westra with Half Brother 28, part number 1. Just to give you a heads up of where we're at, Zan is at a new home at Dr. Helson's ranch in Arizona. He is also being lent out to families to help them grieve and help them deal with things in their life. Ben is at home finishing up school so he can go down and see Zan when school is over. So they're on their way. Ben and Sarah are on their way to go see Zan. This is chapter 22, CH-72. Mile by mile, the heat grew as we drove south until it was almost better to keep the windows rolled up to keep out the searing wind. Dad's Mercedes didn't have air conditioning. We tried to leave early in the mornings and find a hotel by 4. This trip was so different from the one that Dad and I had taken 2 years ago crossing Canada. This time I sat up in front with Mum the whole time and we talked and our words filled the car. I loved it. Away from Dad, Mum seemed different, younger, happier, freer somehow. We talked a lot about Zan, how we felt when he first arrived and how our feelings about him changed week by month by year. We talked about the things he'd done that made us crazy and made us love him, and the things that made us shake our heads in amazement. When Mum and I listened to the radio, sometimes we sang along together. So loud once that we didn't hear the siren of the police car that was trying to pull us over for speeding. The cop was pretty harsh with Mum when he first came to the window, but she was so apologetic and pretty and charming that within 3 minutes he was chuckling and let us go with a warning and wishes for a great vacation in Reno. I had my birthday on the road. I turned 15, and that night at dinner, the waitress brought out a cake with sparklers on it, and everyone at the diner sang, "Happy Birthday." It was the best birthday ever because I knew I would be seeing Zan the next day. We pulled onto the gravel drive of Helson's ranch around 10:30 in the morning. Peter must have heard our car coming because he emerged from the chimp house to meet us. He looked different. He'd cut off his beard, just leaving the mustache, and it made him look younger and handsomer, but also kind of vulnerable. He opened his arms to me and I gave him a big hug. Then Mum surprised me by hugging him too and giving him a kiss on the cheek, something I'd never see her do around Dad. "I've got Zan in a cage by himself," Peter said. "I figure Rachel might get a little jealous, so I moved her into the other side." As I walked into the chimp house, my stomach did gymnastics. What if he'd forgotten me? What if he thought I was a traitor for leaving him? All the chimps set up their usual din when we entered the building. Zan was in the corner cage, and as I slowly approached the bars, he turned. He stared for a moment, motionless, expressionless, and for a second I thought, "It's happened. He's forgotten me." Then his eyebrows shot up and his lips pulled back in a smile to reveal his lower teeth. He raised himself on his legs and ran to the bars. His hands greeted me instantly. He pursed his lips for a kiss, and I let him shower my cheeks, and then I kissed him all over his forehead and face. "Come tickle," he signed. "Hug, hug." I pushed my hand through the bars and tickled him as much as I could. He didn't smell like us anymore. Not our shampoo or soap. He smelled clean, but more like a real animal. It didn't matter. All that mattered was being here. "I missed you, Zan. I missed you so much," I said aloud. I didn't even try to sign it because my feelings were in such a hurry. "Out. You, me, out. Open now." "Can he come out?" I asked Peter. "Or can I go in?" "We'll bring Zan out after lunch." The way Peter said it made me realize these were Helson's rules, but I didn't care right now. It was so good just to be beside him, and we talked and laughed through the bars. He greeted Mum warmly too, and we spent a long time grooming. Though he still seemed small compared to the other chimps in the colony, I could tell he was bigger now, in the face and chest especially. His skin was a bit darker too. Just 2 months. He looked pretty healthy. Peter had been taking care of him. I checked Zan's arms and saw a few mangy patches where he'd pulled out his own hair. It didn't look too bad, but then Zan smiled and I noticed one of his upper teeth was missing. "What happened to his tooth?" I asked. It was too early for him to be losing baby teeth. Peter nodded uncomfortably. "A bit of a run-in with Zeus." "Helson put them together?" Mum said aghast. "Part of his acclimation regime," Peter replied. "Zan and Rachel are very friendly now, and that's great, but the ideal would be to introduce another male into the mix. I've been working on Caliban and Igor slowly. He rocked his head side to side. Limited success so far, but I'm still hopeful. It's early days, but Helson's more of a tough love guy. He wants Zan integrated faster. So he started bringing in some of the other males, sometimes 2 at a time. Mostly it goes okay, if everyone just kind of stays out of everyone else's way. Other times, there's trouble. Doesn't Rachel stand up for him, I asked. She does, but her status is fairly low, and she's not that strong, so she backs down pretty fast if she's ganged up on. Anyway, Zan's still wary of the other males, and he usually gets as far away as he can, against the bars of the cage. He turns his back on them, which they don't like. It's insulting. But Zan doesn't know that, so he just stares at the bars. Like a prisoner, I thought, wishing I could take him 1,000,000 miles away. One day Helson let Zeus in, Peter continued. And Zeus watched Zan for a while, and then just walked over and gave him a smack. Zan's face hit the bars, and his tooth got cracked right in 2. We had to remove it. My eyes just watered thinking of it. I looked at Peter's cattle prod and imagined shoving it into Zeus's chest and zapping him until he fell over. Why would anyone pick on someone so small? The chimps suddenly all hooted, and we turned to see Dr. Helson entering the building with Sue Ellen. "Sarah, lovely to see you again," he said, shaking Mum's hand, and holding it a little longer than I thought was necessary. I was watching him more carefully now, after what Dad had said. "And Ben, hello there, young man. I'm sorry I didn't come out to greet you. I was on a long-distance call." "We were just noticing Zan's missing tooth," Mum said directly. Dr. Helson shrugged. "A baby tooth. It'll come back." "Perhaps it's not wise to have Zeus and Zan in the same cage yet," Mum said. I could tell Dr. Helson didn't like this at all. He seemed to stand a little taller, and his nostrils flared. Strange as it may sound, Zeus was doing Zan a favor. Zeus was asking for an acknowledgement of his superiority, which is natural and right in a colony. It's also Zeus's way of saying, "Snap out of it." And after that slap, I noticed Zan didn't spend as much time staring meekly through the bars. Wouldn't you say, Peter? "He's a little more active now, definitely," said Peter. "Your Zan's having a good long sulk," Helson said, looking from me to Mum. "It's not good for him, and it's upsetting the harmony of my colony. He needs to adjust. The faster the better. Now, I hope you'll have dinner with me tonight." I noticed Mum hesitate a second before saying, "That would be lovely, thank you." "I'm off early tomorrow for a conference in Florida, so it's my one chance to visit with you properly. Barbara's getting back tomorrow, and Peter knows the ropes. They'll be able to answer any questions you might have for your doctoral dissertation, Sarah." "Thank you very much," said my mother. "I'm sure it'll be a very productive visit for me." That afternoon after lunch, Peter took Zan out to one of the fields with me and Mum. Sue Ellen came along. School was out for her too. She'd grown up with chimpanzees and was completely comfortable around them. She was patient and gentle and respectful, and it made me think her father couldn't be a complete monster, or where would she have learned all this? Zan really seemed to like her. Mum had brought her notebook and was observing Zan and asking Peter all sorts of questions. Sue Ellen and I mostly played with Zan in the shade of a few trees. "He's such a darling," she said. "Caliban and Igor are sweethearts, but they have nothing on Zan." I wondered if she was just trying to be nice, but she seemed genuine. She learned some signs on her own so she could talk to Zan. She was quite pretty, a bit short maybe, but I liked watching her breasts move under her halter top. I wondered if she was interested in me. At the end of the afternoon, Peter had to put the collar on Zan and walk him back to the chimp house. Outside his cage, Zan gave me a hug, squeezing his arms around me so tight it started to hurt. "I'll see you tomorrow," I told him, but if he understood, he didn't believe me. He clung to me even tighter. "Zan," I said, "let go, you're hurting me." And I actually gave him a thump on the back to get his attention. I'd never hit him before. "Zan," said Peter, and he lifted the cattle prod. At the mere sight of the prod, Zan whimpered and stopped squeezing me. I didn't like to see him threatened like that, or that Peter was the one to do it, but I was glad Zan let go. He was a lot stronger than I remembered. "Sorry," he signed to me. "Sorry." "Sorry," I signed back and stroked his arm and shoulder. We tickled a bit more. I wanted to show him I wasn't angry. After a while, he seemed happy enough to jump up onto Peter and get a piggyback into his cage. That night at dinner, I think Dr. Helson tried to get Mum drunk. He kept filling her wine glass. This time, Zan was not in a cot beside us. Peter had not been invited. It was only Helson, me, Mum, Sue Ellen, and Winston. Just like last time, Dr. Helson had cooked a meal. It was pork, from one of the pigs on his farm, he told us. Apparently, he had all sorts of animals on it. He wasn't interested in just chimpanzees. The food was excellent, and I didn't want a single bite of it. Back at the hotel later that night, I said to Mum, I don't want Sam to be here. I know, she said, but I think this really might be the best place for him, Ben. Right. He's already lost a tooth. Next it'll be a toe, or maybe Zeus will just bite his head off. Dr. Helson wouldn't care. I don't like him either, Mum said. Put an eye patch on him, give him a white cat to stroke, and he could be a Bond villain. We laughed and it felt good, but it didn't change the fact that Zan wasn't safe, and one day he could get hurt, or worse.